I just went up to space.
You just went up to space?
Pretty amazing. Yeah. Mind-boggling. You know, at countdown, my heart was racing, I was shaking, hands were shaking. But it was not like nervousness, it was excitement. As we were going up, sitting on the rocket, I got emotional and I started tearing up because I was thinking about how this has been a long time dream and like I've been trying. Every sense is in full 100% override. For me, it was like, oh, someone is in distress, not like physically in distress, but like something's going on. And so as soon as I saw that they were having trouble, I jumped in to try to help them get out of that situation. Let's go help them out so they can enjoy this experience as much as I am. Once we like got into zero gravity and we unbuckled our harnesses, I had no idea what was going on. It was just, it's hard to remember, like, because you also like lose your sense of up and down. It's really like, space is very dark. It's like devoid of color. It's deeper than black. It's a super deep blackness. And you see that surrounding this planet, which is reflecting the light of the sun. And I mean, you realize like, this is a very unique place to be. It's very weird that this exists.
Welcome to the Internet Space Program.
Yeah, well, okay, I guess context, so you just went up to space.
I just went up to space.
You just went up to space.
Pretty amazing. Yeah. Mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's funny like telling people, waitresses, etc. This guy just went up to space. And
yeah,
seeing their reaction.
It's not something I'm often telling anyone, but everyone I'm with is like, hey, he just went to space. And they're like,
yeah.
What has this guy been smoking?
Yeah, like
it's an unusual thing, I think, even here in El Paso, where they presumably know that Blue Origin is shooting people to space in Van Horn. I don't know, but people seem surprised.
Yeah, I guess this has been something you've been working towards for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does it feel like now that it's done?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know yet, I think, honestly. As we were going up, sitting on the rocket, I got emotional and I started tearing up because I was thinking about how this has been a long time dream and like I've been trying and that it was actually like happening. So I guess it feels really good that it's done, but then the question is what next? And I don't really want to have to think about what next yet. You know, type A people who like try to go be doctors or try to go to space.
Would you say you're type A?
I think in that sense, it's like, what next? Okay, we did this. I'm hoping I can just kind of lay back, at least enjoy like the however many months it takes to process this and for things to calm down before I decide what next.
Yeah. Was it hard to, I feel like when there's something that you've been thinking about for so long, was it hard to be in the moment? Like, were you thinking about you thinking that you were in the moment? Were you in the moment, not in the moment? What was going on?
Yeah, I mean, there was, when I talked to a few people beforehand, they said you should have some sort of grounding technique because it's very quick. You know, it's like 11 to 13 minutes round trip. And it's important to be present because it's easy to get overwhelmed, I think, sensory-wise. Like all your senses are overwhelmed when you're up there. And it's not just like your sense of gravity and your sense of vision and your sense of touch. It's just like every sense is in full 100% override. So going up, sure. Sitting in the capsule, you know, at countdown, my heart was racing, I was shaking, hands were shaking. But it was not like nervousness, it was excitement. And I was able at that moment to stay in the moment. And it was, as we ascended, I was able to stay in the moment. But I think once we like got into zero gravity and we unbuckled our harnesses, I had no idea what was going on. It was just, it's hard to remember, like, what I did and because you also, like, lose your sense of up and down, so it's not even like, oh, I stood up and then I turned left. It's like, no, like, I thought maybe I, like, was upright, but then, you know, you look at the video and you're like, I was floating much higher than I thought I was, because I have no real, like, sense of, you lose that sensation, I guess, of, like, where you are in space relative to your body. So I could have probably done better at staying in the moment. It probably would have been helpful. But I think it's just so stunning that it's hard to.
Yeah. And well, you're a cardiologist, and I feel like you're trained to also look out for everyone else in the crew. And I think that's special. That's like, I don't know if there's any anecdotes or things you want to share.
Yeah, I was definitely the one, like, screaming commands. As you know, we were in the capsule and, like, the light comes on. It's like, okay, escape enabled, which is like the thing could shoot off if it detects any error at that point, and shoot off quick up to 7 Gs. So like, everyone hands on your stuff. And then as we'd go up, I'd be like, all right, the button's off. We can do this now. So I was definitely doing that. I mean, in training, I was definitely the one, like, we all clowned around. We were very, like, talkative. We were probably the loudest group they've had, I think is what they said. We all talked over each other. And even then, there was an episode where we were doing, like, a fire drill. Like, what happens if there's a fire in the capsule? And, like, seat 1 and 6 are supposed to keep their masks on and get up and open the door because the hose will reach. Everyone else is supposed to wait. And when we did it, someone popped up. They ran to the door, and I'm like, no! And then the other guy who had the hose, who could open the door, upped up to open the door, but took his mask off. And I'm like, no! What are you guys doing? I'm like, you're both going to be here passed out. I'm going to have to pick you guys up and carry you. Like, I don't want to do that. And then in flight, you know, one of my crewmates was having trouble opening their harness, not because of anything they were doing, but just because it was stiff. I think when you go into zero gravity, the foam kind of expands because there's no gravity anymore. Body's not pushing it. And so as soon as I saw that they were having trouble, I jumped in to try to help them get out of that situation. And then I think I was probably in making sure that person could get back in their seat. So I was in the moment then, and it probably kept me from seeing some of the other stuff, but it's okay. You know, I think one thing, you know, space changes people, they say, but I also think situations like that demonstrate who, like, the base nature of you is. Yeah. Because someone else may have just, like, not worried about it. Right? Yeah.
They're like, this is my moment.
And like, they'll figure it out. But for me, it was like, oh, someone is in distress, not like physically in distress, but like something's going on. Let's go help them out so they can enjoy this experience as much as I am. And they can share in that kind of, share in that moment.
Yeah. So I guess along the same lines of, like, empathy, it's you're taking part in a weird experiment, which is 2,000 people that then became a 12,000 person community online, and now 28,000 in Discord. All of these people contributed in one way, shape, or form to the seat.
Yeah.
And I know it kind of boggles the mind. It boggles my mind. I don't know, you know, what do you think this represents, or what do you feel as, like, the person that this community put up into space? And it's a weird thing. I don't know if this hasn't really been done before, really.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it can represent a couple of things. One, I think it represents, like, the power of community and the power of, like, just, like, humans getting together to do something, because it started as an idea, probably a couple people, you included, and then it blew up, and enough money was raised to send 2 people to space, me being the second. Not just that, like, funding other projects, something like 60 plus projects, and also just having money still to do amazing things going forward. Like, that this organization's been here for over 3 years, And that was like the audacity of just some people saying, let's see if we can do this. On the other end, personally for me, it's, I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and it's like, well, how can I kind of give back to that community so that they look and they're like, oh, okay, this was a good choice. Like this person, while it was done at random, like I was picked by the lottery system, that I am a good steward of the seat and like of the experience for the larger MoonDAO community.
No. Yeah, well, I mean, I think, I don't want you to feel like you owe the community anything, but I think we are very lucky to have you represent us. Like, I think you are very well spoken, but more than that, you get it. You get what's happening here, and you understand it. I mean, you were in crypto a lot earlier than most folks, and it takes some amount of curiosity, some wanting to understand, some digging into the future, and I feel like you're a curious person. I don't know. I don't necessarily have a question around that, but more like I'm just I'm interested to just, I don't know, like it's hard to articulate like that this is. It is weird, right? It is weird that people on the internet decided that this was going to be an interesting thing to do. Let's send someone
a social experiment, maybe, right? I mean, they were.
Yeah.
I mean, that they believed in.
Why do you think it's like crypto in space? Because like you are someone that, likes space.
Yeah.
But also somehow found themselves into crypto. And I think that's a common thread between crypto and space people. What do you think that is?
I mean, I think I guess we'll start with people who go into the like crypto, particularly if it was kind of early, is people with curiosity. So you could go your whole life right now and avoid it. It hasn't been so disruptive that it's in every aspect of our lives yet. Might be in 5 years, it might be in 10 years. That's what a lot of us assume is going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. So I think to get involved in that space, you have to, both have a curiosity to learn something new. And it's not like crypto is complicated, but there is enough intricacies that it requires like effort to really get into it. And then currently it involves some ability to take risk. Maybe calculated risk, maybe not a lot of risk, but you're going into this like wild, wild west of potentially finance, contracting, and lots of other use cases. Well, space is the same thing, right? Space draws a lot of people who want to do hard things, who are curious, who want to solve problems that we haven't figured out yet, and also want to take some risk, because there is risk in going to space. It's a very harsh environment. So I do wonder if those two things go together. And then you could pull out like the sci-fi part of it is like, when we go to the moon, what's going to be our currency? Is it going to be the US dollar? Or is it going to be some digital token? You're probably not going to bring dollar bills up there. And you're probably going to really not want to bring credit card companies up there. So how then do you, if you have a, for lack of a better word, a colony on the moon or Mars, how do you transact between people as things really get going and you have commerce and it's not just like the government sending people and, saying these are your rations?
Yeah, what do you think the future looks like for space travel? Like, this is a relatively new thing, that someone can buy a seat and go. Soon we're returning to the moon and going there to stay. And yeah, what do you think? What do you think that things look like in 5, 10, 15? I don't know. Do you have any audacious bets? Anything that
I think we're in like a second renaissance for the space age. The first probably being like when we had the Mercury, Gemini, Apollo programs, and then we had the shuttle, probably like early 80s to early 90s. But now it's really like commercial space is going to take us further than the government could. You need the governmental agencies because they will fund research and other things that business people won't necessarily fund, some of the risky stuff. And they also often will push the envelope with like what can be done safely. So when we go to the moon, and we are going to go to the moon, I suspect it's going to be NASA, right, first, or another government agency. But once they've kind of gotten there and they've shown some like ability to do it, then the other people are going to show up, and that's where the private companies are going to come. If the Starship Heavy, starts flying regularly, then the ability to take mass up to space is going to become much cheaper, and that's going to let us do things like have low Earth orbit space stations for commercial use, whether it's like a factory or a hotel. And then if you have New Glenn coming online, that's going to do the same thing, right? Then you get to the moon, which hopefully our government will have people circumnavigating it next year and maybe land on it, hopefully before 2030. And now I think it's with the intent of having a base, right? It's like taking the concept of the space station and moving it to the moon. And I think it's an exciting time. Are we going to get to where we can like mine asteroids right now? I don't know. I don't know if that's, unless there's an advancement in technology, I don't know that that's going to happen in our lifetime. But that would be a very good reason to go to space and make, that businesses could make a lot of money off of. So I know there are people thinking about it. So yeah, in my lifetime, I bet the moon will become more frequent. And I'm hopeful that Blue Origin is going to continue flying these New Shepard flights, but at a more rapid pace, which I know is part of their plan. Because then you're going to get more people to space, and they can experience it and see why it's important.
Yeah. So I also want to talk about the human journey. So you found out that you're going to space. April
4 months ago.
Yeah. How has your life changed since that moment? And maybe you're starting to get glimmers of what your life looks like now.
Yeah.
And how do you expect it to change? Where do you see it? I don't know. How has it affected you, your family, loved ones? Yeah.
We're definitely more notable. Like my kid's the coolest kid in school right now. People, when they see my wife, are like, how do you feel about this? Especially beforehand. So it's definitely more of a topic of conversation than it was before. I think in the interim, it wasn't a ton, but I think afterwards, and it has given me access to more people, that's for sure. In the interim, meeting more people doing interesting things, people interested in my story. But I'm hopeful afterwards that I can at least share this with kids, like high school, middle school, and just like try to provide them an inspiration that they can do hard things, they can achieve big dreams, that if they have the support and kind of that make the effort, that everything's possible. I know that that's going to happen, so I'd say more immediately, that's probably the immediate change that I'll see, is I'll be doing more of that kind of work. As far as my day job, I think it remains the same. So unless I can start getting more into the space sector where I'm helping with like developing in a, say it's like a company or as a consultant, then maybe I can veer more towards like the space realm for a career.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a huge amount of physiological or biological change that will be necessary, I think, for long-term presence in space. Do you think about that as being like a potential career path for you? Or are you like starting to think, you're pretty entrepreneurial from what I understand, and is that something that's on your radar? Do you want to mix these passions of space
right
and
now,
medicine?
I would love to, but to be a space doctor, right now you'd have to do 2 years of training, and I'm not sure 2 years is valuable to me. Like 1 year of training I could do, but I think 2 years is probably overkill for me at this point in life.
Is that like a certification?
Yeah, it's another fellowship, so you have to go train under people who are flight surgeons, and then pass the test, and they have to sign off that you can take the test. The people who already have the certification, the board certification. You need that right now to work at like SpaceX or Axiom or Blue Origin just hired their first doctor, Dr. Blue. That's actually her last name, yeah, which is pretty wild. I know, it's an amazing kind of a coincidence. But no one really is excited to hire someone for that role until they've gotten that degree, that certification. There are some places doing 1 year programs now, more in emergency medicine or surgical fields, but not internal medicine, which is the path I would need. So I'm hopeful that will change, because I could do a year, but 2 years to me seems more like, doesn't seem like a good use of my time to be there for 2 years. So beyond that, unless that changes in the way the companies do it, I'm hopeful I can provide them support as either a consultant, as a specialist, because most space doctors are generalists, they don't focus, or find a way to be involved in like a company that's doing something in the biomedical sphere for space, whether it's developing some sort of pharmaceutical or thinking about how to develop technology to help people in space, if they have medical issues. And I'm not exactly sure how that's going to look. I mean, I have a lot of like thoughts about it, but much like I didn't know how I was going to get to space, I think if I think about it, put the idea out there, and just work towards it, whatever's meant to happen is going to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, what words of advice do you have for other people that want to go to space, that see this as like, a lot of people dream about going to space. You've done it.
Yeah.
And you've been able to find a path that is, unconventional. But I don't know, I just wonder, what would you tell to other people if they're trying to navigate their own path towards space? I
mean, the first thing I would say is that don't negate any opportunity that's out there. So I remember I talked to, and this goes two ways, but I was talking to a resident who wanted to be an astronaut. And then I think this happened when I talked to a college student too, and I was like, well, there's now private options. You could go fly suborbital with Virgin or Blue, or SpaceX currently has their orbitals. They're sending people orbitally. Like, I don't want to do that. I have to be a NASA astronaut. And I get it. Being a NASA astronaut is really cool, right? This is like what we grew up thinking. And I would love to be a NASA astronaut too. I think that would be great. But I'm also very happy to be a Blue Origin astronaut, because that's who took me to space, not NASA. And so you can't negate like the opportunities based on some preconceived notion of what should be or what shouldn't be. The other thing is you have to be willing to look at the opportunities that are out there outside of the companies. But for instance, if I hadn't been looking at MoonDAO, if I had dismissed it as a Web3 company or a not serious company, I wouldn't have participated. Then I wouldn't have this opportunity. So you have to be open-minded, you have to be flexible, and you have to take the opportunities you get, because still a lot of people aren't going to space. I mean, there's only been a little over 700 people that have gone to space. That's not a lot. So you can't be so picky when you're trying to fulfill this dream.
Why do you think that this was your dream? Like, I feel like sometimes people say people don't choose their ideas, like their ideas choose them. Do you feel like that like from a young age where you always like space is a thing? Like, why space?
I mean, I remember in Iran at a young age, the Iran-Iraq War, running to bomb shelters when the alarms would go off for the missiles. So that was probably my first experience with like rocket technology, and that wasn't cool. That was not a great thing. So, and then we moved to Nashville and we went to the Huntsville Space and Rocket Center, and that's when I was like, oh, these things are amazing. They have that Saturn V rocket that's huge, like the massive size of that relative to like a human. And that just that little tip goes to space, right at the end, this little piece of that huge rocket, I think blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I was a nerd growing up. I liked science, I liked math, chess team, all those things.
You play chess?
No, I don't play anymore, but I used to play a lot. You'd probably beat me very quickly at this point. But I think that I was always interested in it. And I worked at a science museum, the Adventure Science Center. It had a different name back then, and exhibits would come through, and the ones that always caught my interest were like Mission to Mars, where it's like they were imagining what it was going to be like, in like the mid-90s to go to Mars. I don't think anyone thought we'd be sitting here in 2024 and have not gotten there, but here we are.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned like Iran, and you bring a lot of different identities and perspectives into becoming, an astronaut. And I'm curious, what message do you have as an Iranian-American? Because that is very I don't know. Yeah, you're the first Iranian-American.
First Iranian man. There've been two women who have gone before me.
And then also first Iranian-American, which is also a very unique identity, right? Like,
I think it's always good to have more and more people from different backgrounds go to space, because people have to see someone like them to feel like they can really do it, right? If you don't see people that look like you or with your similar story doing it, you don't think it's possible. And I think that holds true in America, not just for Iranian Americans, but for most immigrants, because you come into this country, and if you're first generation or second generation, you're kind of in between two cultures, right? You're in between two worlds. Whatever the world you left or your parents left, and America and the culture that we have here. So for those people, those kids, they probably would feel dissuaded from trying to do this and becoming an astronaut. Because one, it's not a super stable plan. Like, I'm gonna go be an astronaut. And most immigrants, I think, are taught to find stability, right? Because there's an inherent instability by leaving your culture and your people and your country. So they may not go chase this dream to be an astronaut, but if they want to do it, they can do things that are stable that get them closer. For me, that was being a physician. It could be being an engineer and working in, aerospace. It could be being a lawyer and working towards, space law, which is going to be more and more important kind of as we get into space at a higher kind of capacity. So I guess my takeaway to them would be it's okay to dream big, but you still got to be practical. So make some practical choices towards that route.
Yeah. And do you feel like, I don't know, do you have any I feel like space people tend to think very big and broad, and it forces some amount of you think about what's our place here on Earth? Why are we here? Why are we here in the universe? What's going on? Do you feel like there's been any changes on that dimension of your life? I mean, you're pretty lucky to have gotten this opportunity.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you? I don't know. Has it affected you in any of those dimensions? Or?
I mean, I've always been fairly introspective and spiritual in the sense of thinking outside of myself and thinking of the interrelatedness of everything, right? Whether it's humans or animals and the stars, because we're all made from the same basic components. The one thing it may have really brought home to me is this is a very special place to be. And we know that. I mean, all of us inherently know that, right? Because we're living here, and there's nowhere else like this we could live. But I think seeing it from above, you really do get a sense of it's really space is very dark. It's devoid of color. It's deeper than black. It's a super deep blackness, and you see that surrounding this planet, which is reflecting the light of the sun. And I mean, you realize this is a very unique place to be. It's very weird that this exists, and so we should be grateful for it and try to figure out how to be good stewards of it, I suppose.
Yeah, that overview effect.
Yeah, that Frank White talks about.
Do you feel that? Is that did you get?
I mean, instantaneous, yes.
Really?
Yeah, just seeing the Earth like that and the horizon kind of tipping over, and this just line of color and light. Absolutely, 100% in the moment. Question is, how do you process that going forward? And that we will see. I don't know.
So, do you feel like you have work to do then? Do you
introspective work? Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think it will also be helpful, as we see more video.
Yeah. To
kind of reflect, because that'll remind me. Oh yeah, that's me.
It's only been a day, right?
It's only been a day. We don't have a lot out there yet. Yeah, it has. It's been a little over what has been maybe 40 hours now.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, it's kind of been nonstop for you. So thank you for
No, my pleasure.
a moment. I know it's like midnight right now,
It's
we're
midnight,
yeah. So I appreciate
it's great.
so much, and for taking the time to do this, but also all of the interviews that you've done, all of the, I know. I feel that it's coming from inside of you, and that's like very very powerful. Like you've been thinking about this moment. You've been very thoughtful about everything that's been happening, and I just want to say that.
No, I thank you.
Really appreciate you.
It. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I think should we wrap it up?
What do you think? Anything else you want to ask?
Anything? Yeah.
That's great.
Cool. All right.
Thank you.
Sweet.
All right.
Welcome to MoonDAO, a revolutionary governance model and mission-oriented community that's reshaping collaboration in the space industry. Our mission is to create a self-sustaining, self-governing settlement on the Moon to act as a launch point into the cosmos. MoonDAO is governed like a nation, with its own economy, constitution, voting system, treasury, elections, and senate, but internet native, and so without the limitations of geography. In 2022, we sent our first member to space, showcasing our model's capacity for real-world impact. Now, we're implementing key solutions for global collaboration in the space industry. We offer a borderless, permissionless platform that enables everyday people to participate in the future of space development and exploration. Be part of our lunar legacy and join the MoonDAO movement today.